Emma Thompson had been on countless talk shows, panel discussions, and red carpets, but something about the ITV set that morning felt strangely tense. Not loud, not chaotic, just charged. A pressure humming under the studio lights, the kind that experienced performers could sense before they even stepped into the spotlight. She brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, gave a warm smile to the makeup artist, and walked toward the stage with her signature calm elegance. She was here to promote her new film, an intimate drama about empathy, grief, and reinvention, and she expected the usual conversation, thoughtful questions, a few jokes, maybe a moment of emotional vulnerability. But the moment she saw Lorraine Kelly's expression, she felt the first crack in the atmosphere. Lorraine stood at her mark with a practiced smile, one that usually radiated morning show warmth. Today, however, it looked different, tighter, more deliberate. Emma noticed it immediately. Lorraine's eyes lingered just a second too long, studying her the way a boxer might size up an opponent. Emma dismissed the feeling. Hosts had off days. Guests had off days. This was nothing. The floor manager counted them in, fingers flashing silently. 3, 2, 1. The red light snapped on. "Good morning, everyone," Lorraine said brightly. "Today we have the brilliant Emma Thompson with us, actor, writer, activist, and not afraid of stirring the pot, apparently." Emma blinked at the wording but kept her smile light. "Always lovely to see you, Lorraine." Lorraine pressed on before Emma could settle into the conversation. "Now, Emma, you've been in the news again. Some would say making the news. Your comments last week about Hollywood being a machine that grinds women down, pretty harsh, don't you think?" Emma crossed her legs gently, her posture relaxed. She'd expected the topic. "I think it's accurate, and necessary to talk about." Lorraine raised a brow. "Necessary, or dramatic, because some people," she gestured vaguely toward the audience, "think you've benefited rather nicely from this so-called machine. Awards, fame, roles most actresses would kill for." Emma felt a flicker of surprise. Lorraine was usually firm but fair, curious rather than combative. This was different, but she still responded with grace. "I have had privileges, absolutely. But I've also witnessed the damage firsthand. I've supported women who were pushed aside, dismissed, or mistreated. It's my responsibility to speak up about it." Lorraine leaned forward slightly, like a cat ready to pounce. "Right, but many viewers feel you say these things from a very comfortable position. That it's easy for you to criticize an industry after you've already gotten everything you wanted from it." Emma inhaled slowly. "Lorraine, advocacy doesn't become invalid because someone has succeeded. If anything, success gives us a louder microphone, and a greater responsibility to use it for those who can't." A subtle tension crept into Lorraine's smile. Some say you're always campaigning. Always preaching." Emma's lips twitched. Not with amusement, but with patience thinning at the edges. "Standing up for fairness isn't preaching. But you are always on some moral crusade," Lorraine said, her tone crisp. "Even your colleagues say that sometimes actors should just act. That audiences want to watch films, not be lectured." A low murmur drifted from the audience like a wave rolling over sand. Emma straightened, her eyes sharpening. "Acting and activism aren't mutually exclusive. They never have been." Lorraine gave a short laugh. "Well, not everyone agrees. Some people feel you make everything political, even when no one's asking for it." Emma's patience finally cracked, just slightly, but enough for the camera to catch the change in her eyes. "You're framing this unfairly, Lorraine," she said, voice velvety but firm. "I'm talking about human experiences, not politics." Lorraine's eyebrows lifted in feigned innocence. "I'm just reflecting what people say." Emma held her gaze. "No, you're choosing which voices to elevate. And the ones you've picked this morning seem unusually negative." A collective intake of breath rippled across the studio. Lorraine blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, so you're accusing me of trying to provoke you?" "I'm saying this interview feels less like a conversation and more like a setup," Emma said. "I came here to talk about the film, which deals with emotional healing and connection. But instead you're pushing me into defending my existence." Lorraine's cheeks flushed. "That's a bit dramatic, don't you think?" The studio was thick with tension when they returned from commercial break, the kind of tension that felt physical, like the air itself had tightened around everyone's ribs. Producers hovered at the edges of the set, whispering frantic instructions into headsets. The floor manager gave signals with stiff, clipped movements, as if afraid even a gesture might send the entire situation collapsing into chaos. Lorraine Kelly plastered on her brightest, most camera-ready smile, but viewers at home would never know how forced it was. Emma Thompson remained exactly where she'd been, poised, composed, but unmistakably resolute, as if she had anchored herself to her chair. The red light blinked on again. "Welcome back," Lorraine said, though her voice carried the brittle ring of someone walking across thin ice. "We're here with Emma Thompson," who, a tight, awkward laugh escaped her. "Well, we're having quite the spirited chat this morning." Emma didn't laugh. She simply breathed in slowly, her eyes calm but sharp. "Lorraine, I'd really like to continue talking about the film if we can," she said quietly. But Lorraine, perhaps still smarting from the exchange during the commercial break, producers urging her to soften, her pride refusing to bend, chose the worst possible direction. "Oh, the film," she said lightly. "Yes, the one where you play a woman rediscovering herself after a personal crisis. Some critics said you overplayed the emotional beats, didn't they?" Emma blinked once. "I'm aware of the reviews. I'm also aware that most praised its honesty." "Yes, but the negative ones were, what's the word?" Lorraine tapped her finger on the table theatrically. "Ah, too sentimental, too self-indulgent, too—" "What did that one critic say?" Emma Thompson playing Emma Thompson. A murmur of discomfort rippled through the audience. Even they could sense the target had moved from the work to the woman herself. Emma's jaw tightened just enough to notice but not enough to read as anger. "Criticism is part of the craft, Lorraine. But cherry-picking the harshest comments to make a point, what purpose does that serve here?" Lorraine shrugged, defensive but hiding it behind flippancy. "I'm just being thorough." "No," Emma said, her voice velvet but edged with steel, "you're being provocative." A hush fell so quickly it was almost audible. Lorraine's eyes flashed, the brief loss of control betraying itself before she could mask it. "Emma, this is my show," she snapped quietly, forgetting the audience, forgetting the cameras, forgetting everything except the sting to her ego. "I ask the questions." Emma straightened, not in aggression but in dignity. "And I answer them, but I won't be maneuvered into demeaning myself for entertainment." The audience murmured again, this time more sharply. Lorraine's discomfort was visible now, the facade slipping with each second she tried to hold on to control. "Honestly, Emma," she said with a brittle laugh, "you're acting as though I've attacked you." "You have," Emma replied, not angrily but with a clarity that sliced through the air. Not with curiosity, but with condescension. Lorraine's cheeks flushed. "I think you're being incredibly dramatic. And I think," Emma said carefully, "that there's a difference between journalism and antagonism. I've sat at this table many times, Lorraine. You're a seasoned interviewer, which means you know exactly what you're doing." Gasps, audible, unjustified. Lorraine stiffened as though the studio had dropped several degrees. "If you're uncomfortable, Emma, you're welcome to take a break," she said, the words coated in brittle sweetness. "Nobody's forcing you to stay." Emma studied her for a moment, long enough to make Lorraine shift in her chair. There was no outburst, no meltdown, no dramatic flair. Just a quiet decision settling into her bones. "Very well," Emma said softly. She unhooked her microphone with steady fingers. The audience froze. Lorraine blinked rapidly. What are you doing?" Emma stood up, smoothing the front of her blouse, her movements as graceful as though she were standing from an afternoon tea, not a live television interview turned battleground. "I won't sit here and be spoken to this way," Emma said, her voice low, controlled, impossible to interrupt. "I came here in good faith. You chose to belittle my intentions, my work, and my character. That isn't conversation, and it certainly isn't professionalism."